In the garage of Dr. Frank Conrad, on November 2nd, 1920, the first scheduled pre-advertised radio program in the United States went on the air. Station KDKA was broadcasting returns of the presidential race on the evening of Election Day. From a humble beginning in a Pittsburgh garage to the sumptuous studios of the national radio networks in New York, Chicago, and Hollywood, these are the years we refer to as the golden age of radio.
Here's the Manhattan merry-go-round that brings you the bright side of life, that whirls you in music to all the big night spots of New York town, to hear the top songs of the week sung so clearly you can understand every word and sing them yourself.
Al Kemp, on the air for Griffin. It's time to shine. Shine your shoes and
Tony Home Permanent presents...
This is Nora Drake.
The Golden Age of Radio is brought to you by Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, serving Central Connecticut since 1889. We'll join Dick Bertel, Ed Corcoran, and their special guest in just a moment. But first, be a payday saver at the Big B, Burritt Mutual Savings Bank. Go into any office of Burritt on the first day, last day, 15th day, or any day of the month, and you will meet a select group of savers, the payday savers, businessmen, tradesmen, professional people, career girls, and even mothers who save from the grocery money. Why do these people all stop in at the Big B? To save on a regular and very profitable basis. A payday saver is a regular saver. A saver who knows that only through a systematic plan of savings will he be able to pay for that college education, new home, or retirement trip around the world. At the Burritt, the payday saver receives 5% on a regular account with interest from day of deposit to day of withdrawal, 6% on 2-year certificates of deposit, 5 3/4% on 1-year certificates, and 5 1/4% on 90-day notice accounts. Join your friends at the sign of the Big B, the Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, and become a payday saver. Deposits insured by FDIC. And now the host of the Golden Age of Radio, Dick Bertel.
Good evening, and with me once again is radio collector Ed Corcoran. Ed, we have a special guest tonight, don't we?
We sure do, Dick. A star of the movies, television, and as we will find out in a few minutes, a big star in radio, too, Dick. Why don't you tell everybody who it is?
Well, of course, we're talking about Vincent Price. Vincent, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the golden age of radio.
Thank you, Dick. I feel like I'm back home.
That's the reason that you're on this program, because I knew that you were coming to Hartford, and naturally we thought of asking you to appear on the program, but usually someone whose motion picture career, whose theater career has perhaps overshadowed a radio career would be hesitant to talk about radio, but not you.
No, I still think radio is probably the greatest entertainment medium ever invented. It made the audience work. And I think television audiences don't have to work, and that's why they fall asleep half of the time.
Well, you worked in radio for a long time, right up until, I guess, the Hollywood studios closed in the early 60s.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, you've just returned from England, where you are filming a motion picture, but you did some radio work there.
Yes, they call me up from the BBC. You know, radio in England is still enormous, and it always will be, because people love radio over there. And they do some superb dramas and music and documentary programs, really marvelous. And they asked me if I'd come and do a storytelling show of great short stories that have to do with the macabre, with the unusual, with the strange.
We have received the impression in doing this series, Vincent, that some of the motion picture and theater actors look down on radio and radio actors. In fact, it was a very definite impression that we have received from some actors.
Really? Well, you have come to the wrong fellow. If you want me to
hear that.
You know, I go out every year on a lecture tour all over the country and have for 15 years, and I've lectured in over 200 colleges and universities around the country, and I'm always getting asked by young actors, how do you start in the business? You know, what is the best training you can have? Well, we don't have the marvelous repertory companies that England has, and we don't have state theater as some other countries have. So there is really no place for the young actor to go. But in the colleges is always a radio and television department. And my advice to the young actor always is get on radio. Do as many dramas as you possibly can on radio, on your local show. And I know that some of the colleges I've been to have really started to begin to do some of the great radio dramas and to write new material for themselves. Because it imposes on the actor the necessity to create everything, to create the sets, to create the costumes, to create the expressions, to create everything. And I think one of the great drawbacks of television is that so much of it is just sort of visualized radio shows where they ought to really write television shows. And, you know, I mean, they run out of material. It's a big monster. But radio had superb writers, absolutely extraordinary writers, and I don't think television has that all the time.
Well, you seem to have this perception for radio's gift, radio's ability to create moods, to create sets, because as a young actor in New York, I believe, you decided to work at least anonymously in radio.
Well, you know, I was doing a play, and my first play in New York was a big hit. It was one of those extraordinary breaks that you get or you don't get, and it was a play opposite Helen Hayes, and it ran for 3 years. And there was no chance of sort of going out and doing other plays. I would go out in the summer. We'd lay off for a month, and I'd go do summer stock in Skowhegan, Maine, or all around here. And that was experience. But I felt that the one experience that I really could afford and get in New York was to work on soap operas. And marvelous things like John's Other Wife, you know, and I mean, extraordinary soap opera stories. And I would go work without a name, without anything, because I was not part of the radio group, but I could get jobs because I was in a hit play. And I would take advantage of that. And I worked on radio every single week, and maybe would do 5 or 6 shows a week, playing in these different kinds of radio dramas. And I learned my business, how you really create a part orally. And it was exciting and wonderful experience.
We were talking, Vincent, before going on the air about some of the programs in which you appeared. You have some of these shows in your own collection, but one series in which you starred for some 4 years was The Saint.
Yeah.
And I don't believe you've heard that series in 25 years, have you?
I really haven't. And you know, there are lots of people around the country collecting old radio shows and putting them on tape and really bringing them up in sound and doing a marvelous job. And I've been able to collect about, I think I must have done well over 2,000 radio shows in my life. And I don't have very many of them because it cost a lot of money to have them put on record, and you didn't get paid very much in radio. So unless it was a very special show, you didn't order it taken off the air.
Of course, this takes us back to the days before tape, doesn't it, Ed? When actors, in order to hear themselves, would have to hire an outside recording studio.
Oh, yes, and it was very expensive. I mean, if I had wanted The Saint taken off, it would have cost me about $60. And it was a lot of money in those days, you know, I mean, because you weren't paid that much. I did have taken off some of them. Most of the Lux Radio Theater, which was all the actors gave their services to Lux Radio Theater because it was then given to the Motion Picture Home and Motion Picture Relief. And they always gave us the recordings of those, and I have all the ones I did with Betty Davis and Herbert Marshall, and really superb actors, that great memories they are.
Vincent Price doesn't have to go any farther to hear The Saint, does he?
No, we have a very
Can't
good
Can't believe it.
opening theme, the commercials, the whole bit, Dick. And it's really a great show, and I think the theme itself should turn back the clock a few years.
The Adventures of the Saint, starring Vincent Price. The Saint, based on characters created by Leslie Charteris and known to millions from books, magazines, and motion pictures. The Robin Hood of modern crime now comes transcribed to radio, starring Hollywood's brilliant and talented actor Vincent Price as the Saint.
They say each man kills the thing he loves. And so I have killed you, my love. But the cruel, merciful knife which parts our flesh shall bring us yet together, in a together which is forever. I am ready, officer.
Pardon me, but where may I wait for Mr. Bennett?
Well, he's still on stage taking bows.
Yes, I know. I was in the audience. My name is Templar.
Oh, yes, Mr. Templar. He's expecting you. You can wait in his dressing room. Right down the hall there, first on the right. The one with all the flowers on it.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, darling. Did you really? I enjoyed it. Thank you. See you shortly.
Mercer.
Come in, my dear. Ah, you are sweet, dear, but...
hello, Mercer. Congratulations.
Simon Templar, how perfectly wonderful of you to come. As I was saying, my dear Shari, you are sweet and utterly charming throughout, but never, never cross in front of me. Never.
Yes, Mercer, I remember. And you were magnificent.
Thank you. Oh, Shari, this is my old friend, Simon Templar. Templar, Shari Babcock, my leading lady.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Go change, my dear. I'll meet you shortly.
Of course, Mercer. Goodbye, Mr. Templar.
Goodbye, Miss Babcock. Well, your taste is still excellent, Mercer.
I picked my leads on her acting ability alone, Templar. Now, why I sent for you. By the way, what did you think of the play?
Well, it was...
Yes, I know. I took only 5 curtain calls, an ominous sign. For me, practically a curtsy. Writers. Why, Templar, why don't they have writers like Shakespeare around these days?
It's a plot against actors.
I believe you. Well, perhaps the Bennett's name will carry this thing along for a season, but it will be a strain.
Mercer, why did you send for me?
Oh. Sit down, Templar, while I remove my makeup.
I am sitting down.
Well, then stand up. No, don't. I hate to talk up to someone. I don't work well that way at all. Templar, I'm afraid of this play.
It scares me, too.
No, not that way. Templar, I've begun to notice a peculiar relationship between Mercer Bennett and his roles. Now, you'll think this a bit eccentric of me, perhaps, but it's true. Templar, I'm living my roles.
No.
Wait, let me tell you. I don't know what it is. Perhaps I put too much of myself into a part, but the roles I portray on the stage, I also portray in real life.
For example?
For example, in Time Waits for Tomorrow, I played an actor who marries his leading lady. I married my leading lady.
Astonishing.
Wait. In Crossroads of the World, I played a singer who marries the ingenue. I married the ingenue. Laugh that off.
I don't have to. I didn't marry her. You did.
Yes. But I could go on, Templar. This thing has been plaguing me for years. I have a feeling of fatalism about any role I undertake, that it can't help being realized off stage.
Why get excited about it now?
Because, Templar, because in this play, I not only fall in love with my leading lady, but I kill her.
Well, has the first part come true?
Well, one might say so, yes. She's utterly infatuated with me, of course, and she's a charming thing.
I see. And you're afraid you're going to kill her?
Deathly afraid.
Well, it's been nice seeing you again, Mercer, but...
Wait, don't go. I'm not just imagining things.
The way the part was originally written, I shot Shari. But in our tryout in Boston, the prop man discovered that someone had put real bullets in the gun.
Are you sure?
Of course I am. That's why I had it rewritten to a knife. We use a rubber blade, of course.
Of course. And you have no idea who put those bullets in the gun?
None. It could have been anyone.
Even you?
That's what haunts me about this whole business, Templar. Could I have done it and not know it? Could I do it again? Oh, you've got to help me, Simon.
All right, I'll do what I can. But it might not be much.
Oh, I'd appreciate it, Simon. I'd appreciate it immensely. And when we of the theater...
Please, no tears. Where should I start?
My agent and business manager will tell you whom to see and take you around. Stuart Jackson. Low fellow.
Well, I'll see him in the morning.
I'm deeply grateful, Simon. Why, I hardly dare look at the girl. I avoid her.
Vincent, Daddy?
Coming, Shari, darling, coming. Well, you see, I am...
Yes, I know. The show must go on. See you tomorrow, Mercer.
Well, of course, you appeared in so many of the anthologies, Lux Radio Theater, of course, because you were in so many of the movies. But what were some of the other programs that our radio audience might remember, Ed?
Well, there was the Lady Esther Screen Guild Players and the Hollywood Star Time, and, of course, Suspense and shows like that.
And on one of these shows, like Hollywood Star Time, when would you begin rehearsal for a program?
It was a very long rehearsal period, and you really worked. You worked, maybe from 10 in the morning right straight through until you did the show maybe at 9 o'clock at night. And it was long hours of work. The extraordinary thing was the care that went into radio shows. There was a kind of perfection about the radio actor that was extraordinary. It was a very small group of people, and I always felt myself enormously privileged that I was able to join that group because they didn't take everybody in by a long shot.
Well, we've learned that.
If you liked radio as much as I did, you depended on these people. People like Lorene Tuttle and Hans Conried, and these people who could do anything. They really could do anything. I mean, suddenly if somebody got sick who was playing a Greek, you'd say, well, Hans, how about it? And he was a Greek in 2 seconds, or he was Russian, or whatever you wanted to do.
Tell the story about Lorene Tuttle.
It really is extraordinary. And, you mentioned earlier today when we were talking about that she is famous for having done so many parts on one show. It may have been this show. 20th Century Fox, when I was under contract as a movie actor to them, I had written in my contract that I wanted the freedom to do radio. Now, there was no television at that time. And they were very sticky about it. They were really kind of angry that I should want this. And I said, I feel radio is my training ground, and that's where I want to work. But they let me do it. And so, of all the contract players, I was the only one who was allowed to do it. Anytime I wanted to do it, and it didn't interfere with their films. Well, then they finally had their own radio show on the air, and I can't remember what it was called. I think Hedda Hopper was the MC.
Yeah, there was one called 20th Century Presents or something like that.
That's what it was. And we did a lot of pictures. I did The Lodger and, different things like this. Anyway, there was one show where they had 2 little starlets, little pretty girls who were very sweet and who were up-and-coming stars. And they were on the show, and then there was one of their character women on the show, and none of them could do radio, because radio is not just getting up and reading. It is acting, And they couldn't do it. And Lorene was playing the mother on it. So after about 2 days of rehearsal, they suddenly told one of the little starlets that she would have to go, so Lorene took that part. Then about another day, and they got rid of the next little starlet, and Lorene took her part. And it ended up with Lorene playing, I think, 5 or 6 different parts.
Incredible.
And it ended up, Lorene was a great friend of mine, and she had been the leading lady on The Saint for a long, long time with me. It ended up with my being absolutely hysterical because she was playing a woman 80, a woman 50, a woman 40, a child 13. Just any part that came up, and it was only Lorene and myself in a show that should have been 7 people. And I finally had to work on a separate mic because I couldn't look at her. Because she changed the whole characterization. Absolutely brilliant she was. Brilliant.
Oh. We'll return to our guest, Vincent Price, in just a moment.
Now that you've finished that great Thanksgiving meal, Christmas time probably feels a lot closer than it did yesterday. Yes, Thanksgiving Day really sets the holiday season in motion. Before you know it, you'll be busy planning, decorating, and, of course, shopping. This year, don't let costly bills dampen your holiday spirits. Not when the solution to those money worries is such a simple one. All you have to do is stop in at Burritt Mutual Savings Bank and ask for a bill consolidation loan. In one sweep, you can pay off all those holiday bills, and all you'll have left is a low monthly payment to Burritt at lower interest rates than you might be paying now. Just think, you can get rid of your bills and maybe even start a savings plan. The Big B has lots of experience with helping people just like you who want an easier way to handle their money. Stop in soon at one of their convenient locations, New Britain, West Hartford, Glastonbury, or Wethersfield, Rocky Hill. Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, where you'll find the holiday spirit 365 days a year. Member FDIC. You're listening to the Golden Age of Radio with Dick Bertel and the recordings of Ed Corcoran, brought to you by Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, serving Central Connecticut since 1889, and by WTIC, Hartford, Connecticut.
You mentioned the lodger in our conversation a few minutes ago, and I see that on Hollywood Star Time, Ed, Vincent Price appeared as in both The Lodger and Hangover Square, and I'm thinking back to the fact that you did not appear in either film.
No, it was Laird Cregar. I did Laird's first film with him, which was a thing called The Hudson's Bay was the name of it. And Laird and I became very great friends, and then he died, very young. I think he was only 31 or something. And he had done The Lodger, and he had done Hangover Square. And after he died, I think that's when they did these shows on the air. So I got to play the parts. And it was an extraordinary feeling playing a part that was that much identified with that man.
And that started off a career of the macabre. Haven't you kind of gone in that direction ever since? Not all the time, but many roles are geared that way.
Yeah, sort of. Either that or comedy. I love comedy. And it's very easy to turn the macabre into comedy.
Right.
It really is. I think perhaps if those films that I have done that have been horror films have been successful, it's because I have a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. Because I think I've got to find them as funny as the audience does sometimes.
Let's frighten our listeners for just a moment or two as we present Vincent Price in The Lodger.
You're twice as sure with two great names, Frigidaire and General Motors. Frigidaire brings you Hollywood Star Time. Today we present The Lodger, starring Vincent Price. Due to a sudden severe attack of laryngitis, Ida Lupino will not appear as previously announced. Today, with Mr. Price, you will hear the noted Hollywood radio actress, Kathy Lewis. Each week at this time, Frigidaire brings you direct from Hollywood radio versions of the finest motion pictures with Hollywood's greatest stars. Today, Hollywood Star Time presents the radio production of the dramatic 20th Century Fox picture, The Lodger. 20th Century Fox also are producers of Dragonwick, which stars Gene Tierney, Vincent Price, and Walter Houston. Now, in just a minute, The Lodger.
Of a scourge that broke upon the city of London in the year 1888. It is the story of a man who moved in the shadows, beyond the flickering gaslights of that era, and who wrote his name upon the scroll of infamy with a knife. And his name was murder. dead. Jack the Ripper. Again.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. You have a room for rent?
Why, yes, sir. But it's in the attic. Would that be all right?
May I look at it, please?
Why, yes, sir, of course you may. Do come in.
The room seems very suitable.
Of course, it's only an attic, made over a bit.
It will do very well. I wanted a place where I could do a little experimental work.
Experimental work?
Yes, I'm a pathologist. A sort of medical scientist.
Oh.
The room will do very well. Except for those pictures on the wall.
The pictures?
They're actresses, I believe.
Why, yes.
Would you mind taking them down, please?
Why, not at all. But wouldn't it look better?
No. I have a small portrait of my brother with me. It's the only picture I've ever cared for. My brother was a genius. I loved him very dearly. He need not have died.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I only hope you don't object to actresses, because there's one in the house.
Oh, really?
My niece Kitty. She's been making a name with her dancing, and now she's going to open at the Royal Piccadilly next week with her own company.
Interesting.
Kitty Langley and her girl.
I'll take this room. You've no idea how much it means to me to find just the place I need. It's a relief. A very great relief. This is like a refuge. Quiet.
But Ellen, I'm against it. I don't see why we have to take in lodgers. Can't we get along on my pension?
No, Robert. But Aunt Ellen, I'm beginning to do very well on the stage. Thank you, Kitty. No, it's settled. Larger stays.
Well, what sort of a fellow is the fellow?
He's no sort of a fellow. He's a scientist, a pathologist. What's a pathologist? It's something like being a doctor, Auntie. Well, come to think of it, he does carry a little black bag, just like a doctor's. Now he's here, I'm glad he's here. Yes, there was another Jack the Ripper killing last night.
Funny how the Ripper always picks on women.
Well, I'll feel safer now, too, Aunt Ellen, with the lodgers out. Kitty, stop fussing so. It's your big night, you mustn't be late. I am not fussing. I know it's my big night, and I shan't be late. Where are my flowers?
Oh, good evening, lady.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Slade.
I found this corsage on the table at the landing. I brought them down to you.
Oh, thank you.
I was coming down for an evening stroll, and there it was.
Wouldn't you like to see my show tonight? I've a pass for you.
Thank you, Miss Langley, but I may be out late tonight.
I heard you come in very late last night, too.
Yes, I enjoy the night. I'd like to go down to the river.
The river? At night?
Have you ever put your face close to the soft, dark water and let the water flow over your hands? Deep, dark water is full of peace and quiet. It cools and cleanses. It washes away dirt and rot and decay. It washes away evil. Evil.
Don't you think that Kitty looks charming?
Yes, charming. The woman, subtle of heart.
What's that?
Scripture. Solomon. Behold, there met him a woman, subtle of heart. I must go now. Good evening, and good success, Miss Langley.
Thank you, Mr. Slade. What a strange man. Somehow he seems lonely and lost. Yes, all of that. And rather fascinating, too, somehow. Yes? Who is it, please?
Miss Langley. Miss Annie.
Are you busy? Oh, come in, Annie.
I just wanted to drop in and wish you
Good luck, Miss Langley. Thank you, Annie. And I wanted to have a look at my old dressing room. Aren't you going to stay and see the show, Annie? It would break my heart, miss. Seeing you get the fame I just missed. Besides, a nephew of mine's being married, and I said I'd sing for him. And it's a long way to Whitechapel. Whitechapel? Hasn't been too safe for women in Whitechapel lately. Do be careful, Annie, won't you? Who's there? Who are you to block my path? What do you... No. No!
The water. The cool, dark, deep, dark river washing away the evil blood of women. Deep, dark, clean water.
Yes? Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Miss Kitty Langley?
Yes?
I'm Inspector John Warwick, Scotland Yard.
The yard? Why?
I believe you knew an actress, Miss Annie Rowley?
You'd better come in.
Yes, thank you.
What's wrong? Has anything happened to Annie?
She was murdered in Whitechapel last night.
Was it?
Another Ripper crime, I'm afraid.
Oh, no. Poor Annie. What was that, Kitty? What's the matter with Annie? I'm Ellen. This is Inspector Warwick, Scotland Yard. Annie Rowley's been killed. Was it him?
We're afraid so. We'll detain your niece at headquarters only a short time, I assure you.
What's going on outside?
Oh, Mr. Slade.
I noticed a lot of policemen about.
Bear with Mr. Warwick. This is Mr. Slade.
How do you do?
How do you do?
Inspector Warwick is from Scotland Yard.
Oh, yes?
There's been another Ripper crime. We thought Miss Langley might be helpful.
Oh, what can I do? When Whitechapel's swarming with police who can't do anything about it. You don't know any more about the Ripper than you did before.
Oh, we have our theories.
Oh, have you, Inspector?
Some of our men think they saw him last night. They say they're sure they saw him carrying a small bag of some sort.
Small bag?
Very slim evidence at best, Inspector, don't you think?
Yes, sir. At the very best, it's very little.
Well, good luck to you. I've work to do upstairs in my laboratory. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Slade. Are you ready, Miss Langley? We'd best get down to headquarters and have it over with.
Go away.
I smell something burning. What's burning?
It's nothing. I'm doing an experiment, that's all. Go away.
Our guest is Vincent Price, and we're talking about Vincent's radio career, which goes back, I guess, to the 30s. Would you say, Vincent?
Yes, well into the 30s.
When you were doing those soap operas on an anonymous basis
That's
in New
right.
York.
And I did the Rudy Valet show and the first show Edgar Bergen was ever on with Charlie.
Oh, really?
Oh, it was tremendous because you fell in love with this dummy, and when he'd set him down, he was something dead sitting there, It was really frightening because this thing came to life. He was brilliant, Edgar. I got to tell you a marvelous radio story. For years and years, we always listened to Jack Benny. Who didn't? Really the greatest, I think, single performer on radio that ever was. I mean, just absolutely brilliant. He could take 10 minutes of dead air and make you fall on your face laughing. And if you remember, Ronald Coleman was always the next-door neighbor of the Bennys. Mm-hmm. And the Bennys, who were so chintzy and cheap and, never had enough of anything, were always going over to the Colemans to borrow a cup of sugar or a egg or something. So anyway, lap dissolve a few years. This shows you how much in love with radio I was. I did a film with Ronald Colman, and he and his wife asked my wife and myself over to dinner. And we knew where Jack Benny lived. We'd always known where Jack Benny lives, one of the sort of landmarks of Hollywood. So we got in the car, all dressed up, went down, went next door to Jack Benny. Went up to the front door, next door to Jack Benny, rang the bell and said, Mr. and Mrs. Coleman are expecting us, because they didn't live there at all. Not at all, nor did we know where the hell they lived. And we finally had to call the Screen Actors Guild to find out where the Colemans lived. I always took it for granted they lived next door to Jack Benny, you know? And in his basement was a vault with all those chains around it. Oh, marvelous, man.
Oh, dear. Well, there's a program that you've come across, Ed, which I had never heard of, called The Village Store.
Yeah, this is I guess it was Edward Horton and also Jack Haley, and this is Vincent in a comedy role here. Straight, a little comedy, a little different than some of the other roles we played for him this evening.
The Seal Test Milk and Ice Cream divisions of National Dairy present Jack Haley and the Seal Test Village Store with manager Eve Arden, popular singing star Bob Stanton, Mr. Jellison, Hans Conry, the Fountainaires, and our guest tonight, the noted star of Broadway and Hollywood, Vincent Price, and starring Jack Haley. The past few days, Jack Haley has noticed that Eve has been acting strangely. Jack is concerned about it, but he has his business to take care of, and as we look in on the Seal Test Village Store, we find him waiting on a customer.
Here's your order, Mrs. Ellis. Will that be all?
I think so. How much is it?
I'll figure it up on the adding machine. Let's see now. You have 2 lamb chops, a quarter of a pound of bacon, and a small box of soap chips. There you are, Mrs. Ellis.
By the way, Mr. Haley, I'm not one to talk, but during the past week I've noticed something very peculiar about Miss Arden's acting.
You too, huh? Well, what have you noticed?
Well, every time I come in, she thinks she's a different movie star.
Yes.
One day she was talking like Betty Davis, the next like Olivia de Havilland.
Oh, that's nothing. Yesterday she thought she was Ingrid Bergman.
If I were you, I'd take Miss Arden to a psychiatrist.
Yeah, but how can I do it without her suspecting I think there's something wrong with her?
Oh, here comes Miss Arden now. If I were you, I'd humor her.
Yeah, whoever she thinks she is today, I'll play along with her. Hello, Eve. Hello, Jack. Good morning, Ingrid. Ingrid, please, I give you one more chance. Falling in love again. Never wanted to. Don't know what to do. I'm stupid. Oh, no. Now she thinks she's Marlene Dietrich. That time. Don't you think I have beautiful legs? No? Don't you think you just answered your own question?
Well, I think I'd better be going. Mr. Haley, don't forget where I suggested you take Miss Arden.
Oh, we're going someplace, Jack? Goody, let's go. Honk, 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 honk.
Oh, my goodness, now she thinks she's Donald Duck. Mr. Haley, she's worse than I thought. I think you'd better rush her to a psychiatrist.
Who's going to a psychiatrist? I am, Eve. Just for routine checkup. I thought just maybe you'd like to go with me. Oh, I'd love to, Jack. I'll go powder my nose. I'll be back in a minute. Poor Eve. She's really got it bad. Let's see. Bob Stanton gave me the number of a good doctor. Oh, here it is. I'll call for an appointment. This doctor must have just gotten out of the Army. Bob said he's a vet.
wonder if Vincent Price was afraid to be alone with me. As soon as Jack went out to telephone the store, Vincent excused himself and said he was going to get cigarettes. Oh, well. I'll get one of those magazines on the desk and... Oh, look at this skull. Oof. Why do doctors have these things around the office?
I'm back, Eve. Where's Vincent, I thought? Eve, that skull! What have you done to poor Vincent? Where's the rest of them? Why did you do it?
Why did I do... Well, if you must know, he said he was head over heels in love with me. I wasn't interested in his heels, so I just took his head. Oh, Jack, this is just a skull. Vincent went down to get cigarettes.
Oh, thank goodness. I was afraid that in your condition you might have...
My condition? Wait a minute. Just who is here to be examined?
Well, frankly, Eve, you are. You've been acting strange lately, imitating movie stars and... Oh, here comes the doctor now. Hello, doctor. How do you do? That'll be $5, please. Good day. Wait a minute. How about an examination? Oh, no, thanks. I feel fine. I don't need one. Please, you're wasting my valuable time. Just which one of you is the patient?
Him.
Now, what's the idea of saying it's me?
It's him, Doctor. 1 minute he thinks I'm Marlena Dietrich, and the next minute he thinks I'm Betty Davis.
Stop it, Eve!
Hear that, Doc? Now he thinks I'm Eve, the first woman.
Tell me, does he think he's the first man?
Does he? Look at the name he's got stamped in his hat.
Egad, you're right. It says Adolf. Wait a minute. I told you who I am, and I am promotion in here. Oh, it's Vincent Price. He'll tell you who I am. Vincent, will you please tell the doctor who I am? Well, how can I? I just mentioned I don't know you from Adam. Don't say that! Look, Vincent, the doctor thinks I'm nuts, and you've got to help me. Well, why should I? I don't know you. In fact, I've never even heard of you before. If I only had my driver's license with me, I could identify myself. Well, perhaps you have some other identification. Perhaps your name is in your hat. Yeah, maybe... What are you, a wise guy or something?
Buying a new car in 1972? If so, bank credit may cost you less. At Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, we offer low-cost, convenient auto loans. But we can do more than just put you on the road. We help you establish credit with a bank. We give you cash buyer leverage, and above all, you either start or continue a relationship with a large and progressive mutual savings bank. Once your credit is established, you may want to purchase a new home, improve your existing home, or take a personal loan to finance your trip across the country. Whatever your borrowing needs, it will pay you to start doing business with the Big B, Burritt Mutual Savings Bank. Once an established Burritt customer with good credit, you become a preferred Burritt borrower. So don't wait. Come into any office of the Big B, Burritt Mutual Savings Bank.
Our guest tonight is Vincent Price on the golden age of radio. Vincent, you did work in the golden age. I'm delighted to learn that you are contemplating a series for the BBC in radio. You're one of the very few people that we've been able to interview on this program who is considering furthering his radio career.
Yeah, I love it. I really love it. And I really think that the commercial people, you know, whoever they are, who say whether we work or don't work, are making a big mistake. California, where you drive enormous distances, I have that radio on all the time. And I'd like to hear something good.
You were talking about Lux Radio Theater, and this was probably the biggest radio dramatic production on the air, would you say?
Yes, it was really extraordinary. Cecil B. DeMille was the host, and William Keighley and different people, you know, I mean, very distinguished directors. And the fact that all of the money went to the Actors Fund was very impressive. Besides, I suppose it had one of the biggest listening audiences of all time. And these dramas were rehearsed like plays. You know, you rehearsed a full week. And I think some of the most exciting ones I did were The Letter with Betty Davis and Herbert Marshall, and that was kind of an extraordinary story because Betty, being as volatile a lady as she is and a wiggler, and wiggling was something you weren't meant to do in radio because you had to keep your distance from that mic. They finally built an iron circle around the mic to keep Betty's distance away from it because she'd fall in love with it, and she'd get up to it, and it goes pop and hiss and all of the things that you do when you get too close to a mic, which I'm probably doing right now.
Did you ever find that any of your colleagues from the motion picture screen were frightened of radio?
Terrified of it. Most of the stars at Fox, and I mean the great stars like Tyrone Power and people like that, when Fox had its own show, there were so few of them who knew how to work on radio. They didn't know how to read. They couldn't sustain it. They couldn't give it a variety. And it had to have a variety and a tremendous excitement to it. Even if it was a very calm performance, it had to have an inner excitement.
I think if I were to single out one show, one performance, in which I best remember Vincent Price on the radio, that would have to be from the suspense series, Three Skeleton Key.
Oh, yes. Brilliant show. The young fellow who wrote it, I challenged him to write it. He was sort of trying to get into movies, and his name was James Poe. And he's since won about 5 Academy Awards. And he couldn't really get started. He couldn't get off the ground. He and his wife were great friends of ours. And I said, why don't you write me a radio show? He said, I don't know how to write for radio. And I said, what do you mean you don't know how to write for radio? You write. You create visual effects. You do, So he searched around. He found this short story, and he adapted it to radio. And it really made his reputation, this story, because it became one of the great radio shows ever done.
I would say one of the 3 great radio shows.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we went on the air, Dick. I think it was Sorry Wrong Number,
Agnes
Lion versus the Ants, and Three Skeleton Key.
Yes.
This is on a suspense. These were the 3 top shows of all time.
I think so, too.
Yeah, it never was made into a film or a TV show.
No,
It would be very difficult. I think, again, the imagination is even better than seeing it.
Where are you going to get that many trained rats? Not except in New York, of course.
All right, let's set the stage then for this final performance on tonight's show.
This is the suspense show, and the scene is a lighthouse way out in the dregs of the Pacific, very isolated lighthouse, and there are 3 men in there, and they're just waiting for something to happen, and something really does happen very shortly.
Wow.
Three Skeleton Key, starring Vincent Price. A tale well calculated to keep you in suspense.
Try and picture this place. A gray tapering cylinder welded by iron rods and concrete to the key itself. A bare black rock 150 feet long, maybe 40 wide. That's at low tide. At high tide, just the light rising 110 feet straight up out of the ocean. And all about it, the churning water, gray-green, scum-dappled, warm as soup, and swarming with gigantic bat-like devilfish, great violet schools of Portuguese man-o'-war, and, yes, sharks, the big ones, 15-footers. And as if this wasn't enough, there was a hot, dank, rotten-smelling wind that came at us day and night off the jungle swamps of the mainland. A wind that smelled like death. Set in the base of the light is a watertight bronze door. And in you go, and up, round and round. Over the light storeroom is the food storeroom, and over the food storeroom is the bunk room where the 3 of us slept. And over the bunk room is the living and cooking room, and over the living and cooking room is the light. She was a beauty, balanced like a ballerina on the glistening steel axle of her rotary mechanism. My companions in the light were an odd and opposite pair. Big Louie, the head man who hardly ever talked, and Auguste, who never stopped. But it wasn't a bad life, especially at night when the others were snoring in their sacks 2 levels down. Usually there was nothing to see across the starlit water, for most ships knew better than to come close to Three Skeleton Key. But one night, gazing out across the phosphorescent combers, I noticed something show for a second in the revolving light. Something far off. A three-master. A big one. About half a mile off and coming down out of the north-northwest, coming straight for us. I went over to the gallery door and yelled, "Louie! Louie!
What is it?
Ship headed for the reef!"
Right around.
I had the glasses out now. I couldn't read her name, but I could see her quite plainly. All sails set, the foam creaming away under her bow, her beautiful lines, but why didn't she turn? Every time our light turned, it hit her with the glare of day.
A ship? Where?
Northwest. The light will touch her in a moment.
Can't they see?
Look at her. She just keeps coming on.
Oh, the squareheads. What is it? What is it?
Watch northwest, August.
Huh? I know what it is. The Dutchman, the Flying Dutchman. She is derelict. That's it.
Derelict?
Abandoned. Crew left her for some reason or other, but instead of sinking, she's gone on, running before every wind.
She'll not run long, not with these reefs to break her up.
Beautiful ship. Now, why would men leave a beautiful ship like that?
Impossible. Absolutely impossible.
What?
Here, take my glasses. They're stronger than yours.
All right. What is it you're... Froze in my throat. The decks were swarming with a dark brown carpet that looked like a gigantic fungus, but undulating, and on the masts and yards were hundreds, no, thousands, no, I don't know, an inestimable number of tremendous rats. Frozen in terror, peering through our binoculars as the rat-covered ship gracefully, relentlessly bore down upon the quay, until at last, with a horrible certainty, splintering and grinding upon the rocks, she ran aground.
Look, the rats on the water, like a carpet.
They're swimming.
Oh, sure, they're swimming. Those are ship's rats.
But they're swimming for the rocks.
The door, below, it's open.
Come on!
And down we went, racing down the stone stairs, taking them 3 and 4 at a time. Scared? You bet we were scared.
Suppose you get the windows, maybe they can climb. We don't know.
Right, Chief. But hurry.
You see them?
No. Yes, I do. Where? Up at the other end of the rock.
Look at them! Me! And they smell us! Here they come! Close the door! I can't! It's stuck off here! Let me...
Oh, move, you move!
Made it. Oh, that was close.
We ran up the winding staircase. We passed the tiny windows of the various levels, and every one was covered with a thick, wriggling, screaming curtain of brown fur. The air of the gallery was thick and fetid with the stink of them. The light was dim, brown, filtered through the crawling mass that swarmed over the glass all about us. We could not see the sky, nothing but them. Their red eyes, their claws, their wriggling, hairy snouts, and their teeth.
What can we do? Gee.
Take it easy, Auguste. Take it easy.
I just can't.
It won't do any good. Won't do any good to stand here and shake.
Oh, wait.
Go away, do you hear me? Go away.
They won't go away, not until the...
Finish it, Chief. Not until what?
Not until they've been fed.
That's a frightening story. Oh, I enjoy listening to it every time I hear it. And I have a copy myself, as you know, Ed. Vincent Price, I can't tell you how much we've enjoyed getting together with you on the golden age of radio and learning how much you do love radio.
I really love it. When we finally did the last suspense show in Hollywood, and it was all the people that you know who've been on every show you've ever heard from Hollywood in the old days. And we were all sitting around, and finally Virginia Gregg, who was one of the great ladies of radio, and she looked around, she said, "Isn't it awful?" She said, "Isn't it awful?" She said, "Oh, God, if only television was going out and radio was coming in." And it is true, too. We all felt that.
Vincent Price, thank you so much for being with us. This is Dick Bertel.
And this is Ed Corcoran.
Good night.
The Golden Age of Radio with Dick Bertel and the recordings of Ed Corcoran is brought to you by WTIC and by Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, serving Central Connecticut since 1889. With engineering and technical assistance by Bob Shirago, The Golden Age of Radio is produced by Brian Hartnett. This is Al Tersey.
A dancing program from the Paradise Restaurant in the Great White Way of Manhattan, New York City.